We are live. Thank you, everyone, for coming back to the Digital Green Book podcast. My name is Alana Whitaker. I go by Afro Butterfly. And as you know, here, I like to interview dynamic, amazing people surrounding and around the tech space. That includes crypto, Web3, trading. I do it all. I love finding dynamic people inside of these spaces, especially Black people, especially women, because I truly believe that representation matters. Because if you don't see positive examples of yourself or reflection of yourself out here doing the work, you might not even visualize that it's possible for you to do it. Today with me, I have the amazing Lisa Francoeur. I can't even pronounce her last name because I can't roll my
Or
R.
English.
Francoeur. I can't even. I want to roll my R so bad,
Francoeur.
badly. But Lisa, I think you're so amazing. I've run into you at quite a few events now, and I see you doing the work. The legitimization that you provide for women in this space is astronomical. You literally are spearheading multiple things, but crypto tutors and Fancyfied. And I really want to get down into that today. I also would love to touch on Web3 and sort of demystify that for some of the people because crypto is a vertical of that. But before we get into all that, thank you for being here today.
Thank you from the bottom of my heart for having me. And right before we began, I was giving you your flowers. I was acknowledging you, Alana, for, elevating and celebrating people of color and particularly women of color that are, doing things to make a better tomorrow today, which I'm sure we'll unpack. But thank you for having me.
Absolutely. It's my honor. So, how did you fall into the role that you are doing now? What were you doing immediately prior to Crypto Tutors and Fancyfied?
Well, Fancyfied's been around for a very long time. I mean, it's not just a brand, it's like my essence. And I make that distinction because, with Fancyfied, I have a vision of scaling empowerment globally. Hi, Lucy. I have a vision of scaling empowerment globally. My mission is to help people harness the power of positivity, unity, and authenticity to create new and favorable possibilities for themselves and others. And my values are to uplift, empower, inspire, and unite. And going back to the vision of scaling empowerment globally, the practical application of scaling empowerment globally is financial empowerment. So when I think about crypto tutors and just kind of how that plays into, my modus operandi, it's because empowerment is an inherent aspect in what we're building within the world of Web3, but specifically at crypto tutors, because when I think about Web3 and what it unlocks, it's the democratization of access to wealth and wealth building. Wealth is not just financial. Wealth is also mental. When we're mentally sound, mentally well, that enables us to live better lives. It enables us to interact in more positive ways. And, overall, it just has a much better experience of life. And so we'll get into all the details, but I'll just wrap with, Fancyfied is the genesis of, how I was even kind of mentally astute enough to recognize the opportunity of what we're now doing at Crypto Tutors. And when my co-founder, Nina, where's she at? She's up here. Nina Blankenship, that's also my best friend. We'll get into my tech background. Introduced the idea of entering the world of Web3. I kind of looked at her like she had three heads. I was like, what are you talking about? Like, nah, son. But honestly, Alana, that's how I stumbled into tech, right? Like back in 2000, and I think it was 8, I started my career in tech. I sold enterprise software and I was a fashion stylist originally. So it's like my career trajectory has not been linear. My career trajectory has been so kind of just riddled with twists and turns and unexpected blessings. And, I'll pause there because that was already a lot.
But I think it's beautiful, and I think it has to spill out that way sometimes. what I'm finding for most people that I find are making a meaningful impact inside of this space is that the path is not linear. Most people who approach me and ask for, how do I break into this space? How do I get involved in Web3? How can I become profitable in Web3? How can I find work in Web3? And then I tell them my story. It's not a linear path in any way, shape, or form, especially since we're talking about an emerging technology class. Like there are no hard parameters. The rules are still being laid, and the ground is a pretty much level playing field, with the caveat of the financial empowerment. I think a lot of entrepreneurs already know the metrics behind what it takes to get a business up and running. We've been looking at VC stats and angel investing stats, and it looks a little unfavorable for our community at times, but we keep pushing. So when we're talking about something like Web3 and getting financial literacy education and empowered enough to be a mover, a power player inside of this space, what have you found thus far is one of those things that's been really helpful or a gateway to help people get started if they want to start businesses or entrepreneurship inside of that Web3 vehicle?
I mean, I'm in the world of education because I think that education is one of the most like formidable barriers to entry. You know, I think that like if you don't understand it, you're liable to get got. And I think crypto and you know, let me take a step back. Let's break down what Web3 encompasses, right? Because Web3 is a very abstract and very broad you know, terminology which encompasses digital currencies, for example, crypto. Web3 encompasses blockchain technology, which is the underlying technology that's propping up crypto and how we can move assets digitally, how these assets can be validated to ensure that they are legit, valid, etc. You also have the metaverse, which is an entire virtual world. So I think it's important to ensure your audience has an understanding of the different facets of what makes up Web3. And then in relation to how do you get involved, you've got to get educated, right? Like you need to understand, at least on a fundamental level, a foundational level, what is cryptography? What is digital currency? What is blockchain technology? I don't advise people just jump into this space without having some context around the waters that they're swimming in. And there at cryptotutors.com, for instance, we have free educational resources because of the fact that we recognize how challenging it can be to onboard oneself into this world. You know, we at Consensus last year, which is the largest Web3 conference in the world, it's organized by CoinDesk, which is like the Bloomberg of crypto, the Bloomberg of Web3, you know, because it encompasses all the different components that I mentioned. But saying that to say, you know, we were awarded by CoinDesk last year for responsibly onboarding underrepresented communities to Web3. And I say that to say there's a lot of bad actors in this space. It's very challenging to identify who's, you know, trustworthy. And, you know, back in 2020, when we founded the company, we, you know, Nina Blankenship, our CEO, my co-founder, you know, Moetti Newby, our education and strategic advisor, our head of education and strategic advisor, and then myself, you know, I'm the chief revenue officer and co-founder. The three of us, you know, Moetti, he is an algorithmic trader. He has a PhD in statistics. He trades utilities for Fortune 100. He's been in crypto since 2013. So in 2020, you know, when Nina and I connected with him and, you know, we're having a chat about financial empowerment, he was saying how, look, if you want to get involved, here are a few steps to get you, you know, up and running. Well, the reality was when we tried to implement those steps, it was not a handful of steps. It was super complicated. There were hundreds of steps. We go to YouTube University because, you know, that's where it's at. We didn't want a blockchain developer, you know, we didn't want a blockchain engineering degree from MIT. That wasn't necessary. So we just wanted to, you know, at that time, invest in a stable coin, which is pegged to another asset, for example, the US dollar. And we wanted to invest in this stable coin because we were like, oh, this sounds really interesting. Democratization of access to wealth building. What does that mean? Well, this stablecoin was generating, when you go through the process of what's called staking, which means that you're like helping the blockchain validate transactions. And as a result, you're being rewarded for that contribution. And the staking process was generating 10 to 15% interest. Now, this is key because your savings account is earning less than 1%, right? When you talk about 10 to 15% interest compounded, right? That's how you become wealthy. This notion of making money while you sleep, like the process of compound interest is really powerful. So we were like, okay, bet, let's like, dip our toe in the waters and see, if it's real, right? There was a lot of, and still to this day, is it real? Is it a Ponzi scheme? This, that, and the third. So Nina and I tried to implement those steps. Come to find out, it was a lot more complicated. And it dawned on us, one, that there weren't a lot of trustworthy, reliable educational resources. Two, there certainly weren't a lot of people that looked like us, Alana, that were in this space talking the talk. So we were like, fascinating that, if we're having this problem of not being able to find trustworthy, reliable educational resources, trustworthy advisors, and so forth, I guarantee you there are other people. And as they say, necessity being the mother of invention, we decided to combine our superpowers. I mentioned in the beginning, I had been in tech at that point for, I was selling enterprise software from startups to Fortune 100s, including LinkedIn, where I met Nina back in 2015. I've also done corporate training, I have a mental model called Authentic Intelligence, the new AI, which we'll talk about. But I had done corporate training for Salesforce, AMC Networks, and Nina is a LinkedIn learning instructor. She has, enterprise sales experience as well. She's a media guru, one of the top performers, as myself at LinkedIn in terms of sales. And Moetti, as I mentioned, is a trader, has been in crypto for many, many years. First penny auction, which I didn't mention, to accept Bitcoin as payment. The three of us decided to combine our superpowers. And, we created an e-learning course, what started out as an e-learning course, and has just expanded to include tutors that tutor in a variety of disciplines. We have subject matter experts that tutor in virtually any aspect of Web3, live tutoring. And, we even edutain. And now this is also a competitive advantage because I'm a poet and I rap. So we produce original crypto rap music. Yep. Because we know that comprehension levels and retention levels increase exponentially when people are entertained as they learn. So you can listen to our music on Spotify, Tidal, Apple Music, etc. And we organize the world's largest diversity conference in Web3. And as you can see here with Crypto for the Culture, my background, this is also really important because it was the same thing, as when we started the company. We noticed that in 2021, when, conferences were resuming in real life, we were going to the Bitcoin conference, we were going to Permissionless, we were going to all these different conferences. And Alana, it was egregious how there was such a lack of representation. There was a lack of female speakers, even if they were white, there was less than a handful. There was a lack of Black, brown, etc. LGBTQ, people weren't representing. And it was a very disappointing reflection of the industry, because at that time we had a YouTube channel, and we still do. This is also part of how we administer education. We have a YouTube channel where we had interviewed 70 plus subject matter experts in Web3, all diverse backgrounds, all diverse people, even diversity of thought, which I also think is important. But saying that to say, we knew we were out here. You know what I mean? We knew we were out here, but we weren't given a platform. Folks were applying and being rejected. So we said, you know what? Our philosophy has always been if you see something, do something, right? So we decided that we were going to curate our own conference experience. And as you can see, from all the different beautiful, diverse faces, now this conference, it's our third year of operating, and we've had speakers, including the president of Web3 for A16Z. Shout out to Chris Lyons, to the head of product at Fidelity, Sterling Ingui, and they just released the Bitcoin 401k. the director of emerging technology for the London Stock Exchange, the head of Visa, head of crypto for Visa. The point I'm making is that these are the people that are like, look like you and me, Alana, that are spearheading the charge. And why is it that we're not elevated to the extent that our white male counterparts are? It doesn't even matter. That's not a question that needs to be answered. All I'm saying is that it's important that, we're given a platform, and that's why we continue to do what we do. So I think I might have lost Alana. She'll be back. But anyway, for any of the folks that are watching on the live, thank you for joining us. I'm Lisa Francoeur. Oh, there she goes. I was like, let me keep the folks entertained for those that are on the live stream.
There we go. Technical difficulties. My phone straight up overheated. Can you hear me?
I can hear you. You're great. Can you hear me?
Perfect. Yes, I can.
I was saying a lot. The point I was making was, did you get the point I was making?
Just straight fire. Exactly. But
I spit hot fire.
Spit hot fire, Dylon. I think that's perfect, because when you don't see a representation of yourself, you have to show up and do something about it. So tell me, you said this conference is coming up again when?
July 13th. Because of there's such a desire for the conversations, the content, and visibility of the speakers, we're going to do it twice. So we typically do it in November, Alana, and November coincides with Crypto Literacy Month. And it's going to happen in November, but it's also going to happen in July. Now, here's another important distinction. The conference is virtual and it's free. We do that for two reasons. We want to eliminate as best we can the barrier to entry. As long as you have access to the internet, which is a whole different story when you start talking about the digital divide and what have you. But as long as you have access to the internet, and you'll be able to access the conference, you'll be able to see the speakers. The conference, and it's free, as I mentioned. So that's another barrier that's removed. That's another thing about a lot of these conferences. We just came back from Consensus, matter of fact. And, you're talking about a couple grand, right, to attend these conferences, plus the travel and accommodations. So they're not cheap, to be at the, forefront of this emerging tech. Like, it's an expensive endeavor. And so we at Crypto Tutors are striving to, as I said, eliminate the barriers to entry. And I'd also say that it's an 8-hour conference experience, Alana. So we have, what's up, Silvana? We also have, speakers from all over the world, from Jordan to Nigeria, Singapore, because guess what crypto is? It's global. It's not relegated to a specific country, a central authority, especially when you're talking about decentralized finance, like like Bitcoin and the Bitcoin blockchain. But I don't want to get ahead of myself. All I want to say is that July 13th, mark your calendar. Also, cryptofortheculture.io is the website. So definitely check it out. And then, of course, we're going to do it in November as well.
I think that's amazing. So it's like when you don't see what you want to see out there, you have to go bank it yourself. So touching back on some of the things that you've seen, especially in the last 2 years as the markets fluctuated. Technically not a bear market because structure didn't break, but people are feeling the effects of the pullback of price. When people are looking to break in and become movers and shakers inside of this space, make businesses, what have you noticed some of the best thought processes or resources about going about that process in Web3?
So you're asking me from a business perspective, what do I think is the best way to enter the market?
To be active in the Web3 space as an entrepreneur.
Okay. So I would say that, well, I think payment rails are really interesting. Like Bitcoin has a Lightning Network, which allows instantaneous payment. And again, if you're taking international, what's cryptoforthepeople.io? Crypto for the culture.
Okay, got it. Let me fix that.
Thank you. And what up, Fred? What up, Lucy? What's up, Silvana? Just want to make sure that the folks on the live stream are feeling the love. Mm-hmm. So I would definitely say, going back to businesses, their payments is a relatively kind of low barrier to entry in terms of like integrating into your business model, accepting, different forms of payment. So there's that. You could check out the Lightning Network to get more information on that. I would say also that businesses should consider, blockchain technology, right? It's a digital ledger. So what does that mean? It means that any transaction can be, love the discussion. Love you too, Silvana. So blockchain technology, one of the things that we talk a lot about at Crypto Tutors, especially from like the conferences. We just at Consensus had another panel discussion I moderated about the business of blockchain. And this is a very, again, all of this is in its nascent. So I don't want anyone to feel like, oh my gosh, I'm so far behind. I don't know what's going on, et cetera. Like, that's why education is so important. But I would say from a business perspective, the blockchain technology, it being a digital ledger, being able to all of your transactions, be visible. I mean, it may not be appropriate to have them visible, externally. So there are, private chains where those transactions, can be recorded to this digital ledger and accessible to whomever, needs to view them. But when you're talking about building on chains like Ethereum, or building on chains like, and Ethereum is actually a great blockchain because it's programmable. So, you'll see a lot of like, L2s, like layer twos. You'll see a lot of other chains, side chains off of Ethereum because of that programmability. And that's really like NFTs, for example. The first NFTs originated on the Ethereum blockchain, which is another thing for businesses to think about. And I'd give you some use cases like Starbucks, for example. Starbucks just released an NFT, and it's loyalty based. And the idea is that if you hold this NFT, there are, rewards that you will receive as a part of their loyalty program. So there are some kind of interesting use cases. LVMH also has some interesting use cases regarding the kind of the legitimacy of the items.
Merchandise. Yeah.
So there's a lot of counterfeiting. So it's almost like a serial number, like there's a way to legitimize based on that NFT that this particular bag is actually is not a fraud. It's not a counterfeit. It's legit. So there's some interesting things happening. I invite people to explore. I can't speak with any specificity because I don't know all the businesses, but I'm just trying to get the wheels in people's minds turning around, some interesting use cases that are like easy to understand. Like I think the NFT use case is easier to understand. I hope that answers.
It definitely did. I always love to ask that question unprompted because I have my own biases regarding that. I very much like the NFT with utility route. I always think about what's going to happen when Ticketmaster finally converts over to that model because they hold so many concerts and social events. Or even I've become slightly obsessed lately with Internet of Things. I've been
IoT.
Internet of Things. I've been mining helium. I have miners. I've been mining for about 2.5 years now. And when I went to Consensus, T-Mobile had a panel in conjunction with Helium, and they just formed a merger where they're trying to expand the Internet of Things and broadband coverage. And that's supposed to be rolling out over the next 2 years. And I think that's such an interesting use case. It'll allow us to send files faster. It'll allow us to locate geotagging faster. Like if you put say an Apple tag on something, you should be able to ping faster, find things faster. And I'm a little bit obsessed in stalking them slightly to see where that goes. I think there's a lot of phenomenal use case that can come with supply chain logistics. There's a young lady that I met who actually lives in Kenya. She's actually tracking some of her product shipments with Near as a blockchain. Yep. So I'm really excited to see where it's going. And for individuals looking to break into utilizing Web3 in their businesses, I say choose one thing, study it, and start there, and then work. Because probably the number one question that I get in my inbox, when people stop me on the street, they're like, how can I start using Web3? Because people are afraid to be left behind. They very much do feel like this is the birth of the internet all over again, which in a lot of ways it really is.
It is. That's where the 3 comes in. It's the 3rd iteration of the internet.
Exactly. And I don't want people to be fearful and left out, which is why individuals like yourself and myself are so important, because if we're not educating people on these things as they're coming out, and I mean, even you and I are learning in real time because these things are being in front of our eyes. If we don't teach people how to use these things, it will become another boys club type mentality where it's only for a upper echelon or a certain well-funded sector or section of people, which is why I do like to have these conversations. So
Alana, really quickly on that note, I'm speaking kind of in generalities regarding like business use cases, but 2 things that I think, 2 things I want to underscore. One is that utility, you mentioned utility. That's a really important aspect too. How do you play in the space from a business perspective? Because don't just do it to do it, right? Like if it doesn't have a value and it doesn't have a utility, odds are it's going to fail. Like this is a space where it moves at lightning speed. And if there isn't merit behind what you're rolling out, it's going to be very difficult to mobilize a community, to galvanize a community to rock with you, and so keep that in mind. What's unique, I think, about our space in Web3 is communities drive the innovation. If you look at Bitcoin, for instance, nobody owns Bitcoin. It's not governed by any singular authority. I'm using it because 1, it's never been hacked. And 2, it's the mother of cryptocurrency, right? And 3, the barrier to entry is in terms of finance. Just to play in this space, it's so unbelievably inexpensive. If you go on Cash App right now, I want to get in Web3, regardless if you're a business, you're an individual, whatever, I want to get in Web3. Go, and not that this is investment advice, I just want to make the disclaimer, but you could go to Cash App right now and you could literally buy Bitcoin right from within Cash App, and you could spend $10. You could spend $5. I'm saying this to say the same way that we can go get our nails done, get our drinks, whatever, we can also, invest in appreciating assets. And this is also really important in terms of the paradigm shift that's underway. When you look at adoption rates for digital currencies, Black, Latinx, and female investors are adopting this at a much more aggressive clip than our white counterparts, our white male counterparts. I'm calling that out because of the fact that, as I said in the beginning, when we think about the democratization of access to wealth building, because of the fact that there aren't central authorities that have inherently racist, quite honestly, systematically racist, systemic racist practices, sexist practices. I'll give you an example. Real estate, Black people have disproportionately higher interest rates when they're getting a home, which has proven to be one of the most effective means of wealth building, right? Like these things are real. So it's like, how do you bypass the system? Well, you need a new system.
That's it. This is the thing. So I know people try to figure out how to function in what currently exists because you have to, you have to get your oil changed and buy some new tires and eat and live somewhere. But when it's gotten to this point, and when inflation is the way it is, and the prime rate is literally that number that dictates what your APY is on your credit card, how much things are costing, groceries in your grocery store, when the prime rate is just shooting up, and up, and you don't have savings, you don't have emergency funds, you don't have hard, tangible assets to lean back on, we're literally on the precipice of either something very amazing or financial ruin as an entire culture. And a large portion of us are already below the poverty line. And I get so impassioned about this, which is why I started studying venture capitalists and angel investors and how to find funding and things of that nature. Because I'm like, there has to be a better way to pipeline resources and financial literacy into our community. It has to be a better way. But you touched on the core of it. It's instead of working with the system that is in play, we need an entirely new system, frankly speaking. And that comes from the bottom up. That comes from grassroots up. It does start with education, showing people how to obtain these things now in real time. So onboarding for the moment with Cash App, on ramps like Coinbase. You can also go to CoinGecko, and if there's a specific asset that you're looking for, you can go to markets and literally find any vendor that does carry that. But really going to take motion as a community, like a critical mass of people moving together, making decisions to actually get these concepts to really work. Putting a pin in that for a second, why Web3 is so beautiful to me. When you have a small community, say you had a community of 100 people and you wanted to launch an NFT and you want to see it perform.
Real fans.
That part. Say you want to see your NFT launch well. If you have 100 people, maybe launch a collection of 50 and market it well, make sure it has utility, and make sure people understand how to use it so you know that it sells out. Once you've done enough beta testing with that, so you can understand if it performs well, if people have a hard time finding it, using it, utilizing it, then you can make further iterations. I was literally having this conversation with somebody a few weeks ago. People want to just start creating NFTs because they hear that people make a lot of money.
It's not about the cool factor, right? And like if I may just add a little bit more color, right? Part of why this is such a revolution, and I'm Haitian, so revolution is encoded in my DNA. That's like one of my famous immortal lines that will go down in history. But saying that to say, data has been and will be one of the most valuable commodities. This is really important. I need everyone who's paying attention, everyone who watches this or what have you, your data, right? Your personal identifiable information, your PII, your name, your location, what you like. When you're on these social media platforms, you're engaging with content, you're commenting. All of that information creates an individualistic profile that is then used by these Facebook, Instagram, these companies, and they commoditize your data. What does that mean? They take the information that your activity on a platform, whatever you're populating, whatever you're sharing, etc. They synthesize that information and then they sell it to advertisers. And those advertisers are paying them handsomely to get in front of you, to get, visibility, to basically condition you to buy the things that are the most relevant given how you're interacting with the platform. Now, a lot of this is designed to influence us subconsciously. And you'll notice the implications have been, young kids, I hate to say this, but young kids, the suicide rate is significantly higher than it has been on account of these kids being served content from influencers they're supposed to aspire to be like, right? They're also people spending money that they don't have to try to keep up with influencers that are also getting, the short end of the stick because they don't own their content either. We don't own our content, right? So going back to the data, not just in terms of our personal identifiable information, which is one aspect of our data, but also, what content we're sharing. As a creator, you're making music, maybe, you're doing, like reels, whatever, you're producing content, but you're not being compensated for it. Maybe there's a brand endorsement, maybe there's an ambassadorship, but these companies are making money hand over fist. And that's another thing about Web3. You will own your data. You will have the ability to, and portability. Portability is also really important. I can't take my information, my profile from Instagram and port it to Twitter. There's a lack of interoperability because you have these central entities, these companies. In this case, Twitter is a different entity than Meta, which is now, formerly Facebook. Saying that to say, in the world of Web3, our entity, our data is portable and we'll be able to be compensated for that. Because if a company wants to engage with us, they're going to have to pay us for that visibility. So these are the things that I want to impress upon people around how do we generate wealth. We need multiple revenue streams. So if you're a content creator, this is another reason why you should be exploring this space. But I'll pause there.
No, and I think that is key. And even with that, so say you find a phenomenal Web3 based platform where you can be a streamer or a content creator, something to replace the IGs, which aren't quite treating us as nicely as we, or the YouTubes or the large monopoly conglomerates. It still goes back to community for me, because a critical mass of people have to be utilizing that platform for that person, that creator, to feel the traction, to see the traction. So I think I see a lot of people doing a lot of amazing things. I go to a lot of conferences, I travel a lot, and I run into people with phenomenal, groundbreaking ideas all day long, but it's very much siloed. I think if I could make any call to action, it would be more unity in the space, or more sharing of resources, or compiling of ideas and mobilizing together as a unit. Because if we have 15 onboarding apps, or 15 entertainment apps, or 16 new IGs, there won't be enough distribution of population amongst all 15 or 16 of those apps to really make an impact. Whereas if we all make a conscious effort to discover two of them, that impact could stretch much further. And so,
oh, sorry, go ahead. You go.
No, I was going to ask, have you seen any up and coming platforms? I've heard of the Thetas, which Theta is supposed to be a replacement Twitch and YouTube, and I've seen some beta testing for some IG like platforms. But have you seen anything that you feel like is a good replacement for social media or Web3 thus far? Web3 based social media platforms?
Yeah, so I sit on the advisory board of a blockchain protocol called Vibranium, and it has this like ethos of for us by us. So what I was going to say is, what, like a circular economy, this concept of a closed loop economy. So you see this within like the Jewish community, for example. They do a phenomenal job as a community to invest and reinvest in one another. And that is a quintessential example of a closed loop economy, because when you think about a dollar within the Black community, Alana, it gets circulated one, maybe twice, versus in the case of a Jewish community or even Asian communities like the Chinese community, you'll see that dollar be circulated 17 to 18 times over. So the short answer is, the reason why I joined the board of Vibranium was because the value proposition was, how do you unify the Black community globally through this virtual world? The technical infrastructure is there, which means that we now have the ability to transmit various forms of capital. When we think of capital, we typically think of, venture capital. You were just talking about that. We think of, finances. We think of like money capital. But there are various forms of capital. There's political capital. There's cultural capital. And going back to my example of our data being appropriated, being taken, being sold without our consent, awareness, etc. When I think about cultural capital, I think about hip hop. I think about the billions of dollars that hip hop, and I'm from New York, so like I know, the origin story of hip hop. But saying that to say, when you think about cultural capital, hip hop has been one of the most influential art forms ever. Yet when you look at who's made the most money, the labels, not the artists. So going back to why Vibranium was so appealing to me, I was like, not only is the kind of architecture based on a closed loop economy, because for instance, if you're a creator, you own your IP. So you create, you post on a platform, people can compensate you on the platform using VBX, which is the native token. And that can be converted to, a fiat or whatever. But saying that to say, creators now have a technical digital world that they can play in where they not only own their creations, they own their intellectual property, but they can also be compensated. They can also have access to loans, microfinancing. So if I'm a creator in Accra, Ghana, and I'm looking for seed, funding, and someone in London, UK, who's maybe from the, a part of the diaspora, sees that I'm looking for funding, likes what I'm doing, they can connect within the platform. That loan can be issued. There's, technical backing to facilitate the transaction on chain. So that means that it's not only visible, but it's immutable. The legitimacy and the validity is, because it's on blockchain, right? Like is all there. But saying that to say, that's a very interesting project for me. And we had a conversation, we've been having conversations at like Earn Your Leisure last year, Essence Fest. And then in February, Robert F. Smith, who's the wealthiest African American in the United States of America, he spoke at an event we did at Carnegie Hall, again, talking about how do you harness the power of this technology to really uplift our people. If you're part of the Black community for, centuries, we've been marginalized, we've been disenfranchised, and I'm tired of that narrative. You know what I'm saying? Like, I know a lot of us are tired of that. I was going to curse, but I'm not, are really tired of that narrative. The reality is that paradigm shifts, mental shifts is what's going to change this. Mental shifts lead to behavioral shifts is what's going to change this. And me being a futurist, me being a techie, me being somebody who not just thinks about the next 50 years, but the next 100, 200 years and beyond, I think that this technology is one of the most viable means to close the economic wealth gap. I think that Vibranium is one of the most interesting platforms because it's also built by people that look like us, Alana. So I'm gonna pause there because that was a lot.
No, I think that is beautiful, and I would love to vet and find something to endorse because I sort of feel like that's where we are. The hunger is there. You already pointed to the stat earlier, like during this last 2 waves of crypto, the highest amount of activity and investment came from our community, people who look like us. We are looking for a way to transform our current financial situation. And it's more than just some frilly frou-frou. A lot of people got burned by bad actors, but it's some legitimacy here. There is good technology here, and it's going to take education. It's going to take safety and security lessons. That's what I harp on. That's what I focus on. The bulk of how I even fell into this space is I literally was learning for myself, and people were like, well, show me what you're doing. And next thing I know, I'm holding DeFi classes, showing people how to liquidity provide and pull and stake and on ramp and off ramp. And it just turned.
Careful with the uniforms.
It just turned into a business from there. And now that I'm like, okay, next level. Yes, I can continue to show people how to obtain assets, but we really need to be thinking about mass utilization of our own token gated platforms. So once we can choose a platform and agree on that consensually and really push to onboard people into that, I think that'll be the next step to us, like actually seeing tangible gains inside of generational wealth. So I would love to learn more about Vibranium. So we can definitely circle back and chat about that. As we wrap here, because clearly I could talk to you forever, but it's almost been an hour already. Oh my God.
Let me just carve out an hour because I don't know how long this is going to really be.
Usually when I interview people, it's very conversational, and I find that things just flow. And I love interviewing people who I find kindred spirit in and like mine, and the fact that we both have such a deep concern about generational wealth for people who have reflections in us. I could probably sit here and talk clear to midnight, I would lose track of time.
I know, I love it too. And I'm grateful, before we hop, I just want to make sure that, again, I wrap with giving you your flowers, right? Like, this is not for the faint of heart. Like, we are in the future, and we are, I have a tattoo here, Sankofa, which is a Ghanaian expression. It's a Ghanaian Twi, I think, is the language. And it means go back and bring forward. And, that's what we're doing. We are literally going back and we're bringing people forward, right? Like, it's not about the future. Like, the future is now. We're just doing what we can and contributing in the ways that we can to ensure that it's not about not being left behind. It's about spearheading. It's about leading the charge. It's about creating. I always say, Fancy Five says, if you want to predict the future, create it. So thank you for creating a better tomorrow today.
Thank you as well. One of my closing questions will be about the tech of everything. There's so many different roles that somebody could land on inside of Web3. I often give an analogy or an example of this is just like a restaurant. Sure, people will come for the food. You need a chef, but you're going to need a busboy. You're going to need a cashier. You're going to need a marketer. There's so many different roles of what could be done when you're really trying to be of assistance or find your foothold inside of this Web3 space. And you touched on your technical background a bit, and I would like to lean into that sort of for my final question. When you are finding little reflections of yourself as you're traveling out there, what are some of the more interesting positions that you find really need filled, but people just don't know where to look or how to get to them?
That's such an excellent question. And Monique, I'm glad you like the quote, if you want to predict the future, create it. Speaking of intellectual property, I trademarked it. I'm probably not the first person to ever say it exactly like that, but I'm the first person to trademark that. So that's a lesson in IP. So let me make sure I understand the question. You're saying, repeat it again. I want to make sure that I answer it.
So as someone that has a technical background, as we're rolling over into a new area of tech, this new Web3, which we've already with the internet, we're very much app-based, very much cloud, very much connectivity. Now we're looking at digital sovereignty. We're looking at ownership, which comes with a lot more accountability. We're looking at creating easy to understand UI experiences for people who don't want to learn all of the hard back end. They don't want to know that they're using Web3. They just want to be able to hop on an app and do things. For the people who are working silently behind the scenes, and as someone who has a technical background, what are some roles that people might not be thinking of they could really look into to make themselves useful inside of this Web3 space that it's not a forefront of their mind. Everyone thinks full stack developer. Everyone thinks UX, UI. But what are some other potential roles that they could really look at?
Listen, that's an excellent question. And the reality is, like, when I started my career, I never even considered tech, right? Like, that was so not a consideration because it wasn't in my purview. And it wasn't in my purview because, like, I didn't know anybody in the industry. I didn't have exposure. And I always say proximity is possibility. So it's like, if I would have known that people were like you and me, Alana, were in tech, I probably would have had it as a part of my goals, or I probably would have had it. Because that's another thing about tech. It has created the most millionaires of any other industry. And the way that I look at it is tech is the macrocosm and Web3 is the microcosm. So, Web3 is just kind of like building. Tech has been here, for a minute. There's a lot of different facets to tech. But saying that to say, just like me, who actually isn't technical, you know what I mean? Like, I don't have an engineering degree. I do not code. I do not know Python. I probably should. Not but Python, probably Rust. Anyways, I don't have I'm not a developer. I'm not an engineer. This is an important distinction, but I know how to sell. You know what I mean? Like, I know how to build relationships and convert, conversations to revenue, right? I know how to, from a marketing perspective, I'm not a marketer in the traditional conventional sense. Of course, I'm a marketer. If you look up anything crypto tutors or Fancy Five related, I obviously had a hand in that. But anyways, but the same way in, the entertainment industry, the record labels, the same way in, a marketing agency, a bank, like Bank of America, etc. Like, all of these institutions, they have sales, they have marketing, they have finance, they have accounting, they have engineering. What makes up a business is not one singular role. Okay. What makes up a business is a composite of all these different functions. And if you're interested in being in Web3, don't rule yourself out because you don't have, a technical background. Gaining exposure, and this is also why, Crypto Tutors pays a lot of attention to exposing folks to educational content that has practical applications, meaning that we're not just hypothesizing and theorizing, we're giving you information and resources that can be applied in actionable ways. So one, Alana, I want to make sure that folks leave the conversation with knowing that if they're sales and marketing, finance, accounting, legal, etc., all those functions make up any like Web3 company.
Exactly.
Right? So there's that. Secondly, I would say that, the Crypto for the Culture conference is really interesting because one, you're getting exposure to companies that are building in this space. Two, you're actually getting access to employment opportunities. So we have within our resources, in addition to providing educational resources that are accessible within this like portal, you also have access to jobs. So the companies that are hiring, what jobs they're hiring for, and you can reverse engineer the qualifications, right? So whether you find them, within the Crypto for the Culture experience, one thing that I would also like to share as far as strategy and tactics are concerned, if you find a company that you think is interesting in Web3, look at the roles on their careers page and see what the qualifications are for that role. Do you have those qualifications? If you don't, then that's a skills gap. And that skills gap can be closed once you get the right, upskilling, meaning that from a continuing education standpoint, from a major, if you're still in college standpoint, from an elective, if you're still in college standpoint, there's, a lot of different, courses that you can take to upskill. Crypto Tutors has a variety of them. But my point is that knowing is half the battle. Knowing that this is a space that you can be in, you deserve to be in, the industry needs you, is like half the battle. Knowing that you have the qualifications. And if you think that you don't, look at some of the jobs. And like I said, reverse engineer, meaning that you look to see what the qualifications and competencies required are, and where you don't have or what you don't have, you can build on those skill sets. So absolutely. Did that answer your question?
It absolutely did. And because there's no one, again, we came on talking about neither of us have a linear path into where we are now. And it really is about doing the extra effort to find your way into where you want to be if you have an idea. I tell people oftentimes, if they're really looking for a good start and they have a convenient area, to look at a crypto project and then go to that project's website. So say if you want to work at Near or Ethereum, literally go to the actual web. Exactly. And go find different roles, find a point of contact person. That's why I love LinkedIn. I really want to start hosting some master classes on networking, even though that I don't consider myself a master in any way, shape, or form, but I've learned so much.
Girl, you ran up on me almost a year ago. What are you talking about?
Like in the last year, like, thank you so much, Joy. Literally learning how to network, follow up. The follow through is everything, and being present is really key. But Lisa, I'm so grateful for your time today. I'm looking forward to your conference. We're gonna go ahead and bookmark this website right now. Everybody, clear your schedule in July. And I'm looking forward to it. I think you're doing amazing work out here. You're definitely inspirational to me. I know a lot of young ladies were so excited. Like 100 people signed up for this stream. It's crazy.
Oh, okay. Well, I hope I said some stuff.
You absolutely did. You inspire a lot of people, and we see you doing the work. And I'm looking forward to seeing you grow more. I think your panel was amazing. I saw Akechi on there as well.
Oh yeah, it's because to your point around community, you know what I mean? Like for the people that have been in this space, I've been in the space since 2020, like hard body. And like, we're still here and we're still, navigating the ups and downs. It's funny because when you were talking about trading, there's this thing called the fear and volatility index. And, the fear and volatility index, right? It literally measures how fearful people are. And it's an indicator that helps kind of govern, trading strategies. Anyways, my point is, Alana, just to close out, CoinMarketCap, if you want to look at some interesting projects, coinmarketcap.com is got, I think it's like the top 500 cryptocurrency projects. Mind you, there are thousands and thousands of crypto projects in the world. But anyways, it can kind of give you some perspective about what the biggest are. It's in order of market cap. So I will leave folks with that and just say thank you again for having us. We're warriors.
Absolutely. And I know I'm going to bump into you at the next conference.
Get ready for a massive hug. I love that.
Massive virtual hug.
Wait, this one's more muscular. All right, anyways, I'll work on my muscles.
Absolutely, Pam. Make sure you follow Lisa Fancyfied on Instagram, and definitely check out this website. If you're following on LinkedIn, please give her a follow. This replay will be available on LinkedIn and YouTube. Thank you so much, everybody. Have a great day.
CryptoTutors.com. Check us out.
Yeah.
Thank you, Lana.